That's right. Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers, and welcome to Stanza 2 of the Sorcerer's Apprentice recap podcast. And tonight, I have with me a member of each of the three teams. I myself representing Team Verde, Pie on my cake representing Team Castle. How you doing, Pie?
I'm doing fantastic. Great night as always.
I'm sorry.
I said great as always.
And for the second time on the podcast after his winner interview, So You Want to Be an Imagineer Season 16 winner, Disney Dad, representing Team Brava.
I'm trying to catch Pie on my appearances here. Kind of like he's like the Alec Baldwin of the podcast, isn't
he? Yeah. Something like that.
Hey, Pie, I came up with a perfect analogy of what your name is.
What is it?
Your name is essentially cheesecake.
It's cheesy joke about cake. I like it.
Yeah, because I feel like cheesecake is like the closest thing we have to a blend between pie and cake. Like it's got like a pie-like texture to it, but in the shape of a cake. What do you think?
You know, that does sound good. It doesn't mix in the mathematical side of it, but from the dessert side, you know, that's decent. That works.
I was just
thanks for that. Now I want cheesecake. Thanks for that.
Yeah, I had a slice of cheesecake for dessert with lunch today, and I was thinking about that just randomly. Like, hey, this is kind of like a pie and cake mix.
Nice.
Good. All right, folks, so we're talking about the Pavilion Symphony. For those who don't know, the Sorcerer's Apprentice is an armchair Imagineering competition hosted on the WDWMagic Imagineering forums by Tiki, Space Mountain, and Monorail Red. Once again, just want to give all three of those guys, plus all the guest judges, major props, especially Red in Space, for coming up with all this complimentary side content. I mean, geez, like, you know, they just came up with Phantasmic 2000, which I don't even have remotely enough time to check out in full, but there's just so much stuff on top of the competition, and that's really why I think they're going above and beyond. And yeah, I mean, I think this might be the most well-run competition I've ever seen, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it a bit last time, but this has more effort put into it than most, like, actual reality TV shows on television.
I mean, outside of the actual trouble of, you know, production and cameras and interviews, and stuff like that. Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you watch Survivor this season, a lot of people are complaining that the challenge format has gone back to a very similar, like, okay, guys, you're going to swim out, you're going to grab the puzzle pieces, you're going to come back, you're going to put the puzzle together, all right? Like, that's literally what every challenge is. So I think it's fair to say that Red and Space and Company have come up with more creative challenges in the two stanzas than Survivor has all season.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to kick things off with the winner of this project, probably the runaway competition winners so far. Team Brava, represented by Disney Dad. Now, Voxel was the project leader, and I gotta say, having met Voxel a couple times, he used to be a guest contributor on the podcast back in the day. This definitely has his signature fingerprints written all over it. I mean, this I'm sure the other.
Hello?
Hello?
Oh, I'm just paused to let Disney Dad talk. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I thought you cut off. Yeah, no. It was kind of an interesting thing because he wasn't the original project manager, so he stepped in. I guess it was Monday, and took it from there. But yeah, his fingerprints were, as you said, all over this. He was a great source of information for this project. So, and obviously was a great manager. So.
Yeah, I love the slideshow design, and I love how professional it all looks, and the fact that it's not just like, okay, pictures and text, that you have graphs, you have different layouts for the slides. I don't want to go through every individual slide and linger on it, but just I'll provide links in the description so folks can go and check out each individual pavilion. But I mean, just going through it, it legitimately looks like a better business presentation than most actual business slideshows give. Like, you guys went above and beyond.
Yeah, and as I think Space mentioned in his review of it, truly was inspired by the Switzerland proposal. And we hadn't initially intended to do both of the proposals that way. I think we thought about the country, of course, we were going to do that, but the microverse initially wasn't going to be that way. And it just seemed to kind of mesh towards the end. That's how we decided to do it. And they flipped, of course, the slides little bits to tailor them for the microverse. And obviously, we thought it came off pretty well. So we were pretty happy with it.
All right, so let's get things started with the microverse. I myself am a big fan of Adventures Through Inner Space. I think it's probably like the classic Disney fan question of, if you could resurrect one lost attraction, what would it be? My go-to answer is always Adventure Through Inner Space. So essentially, I don't know how much this came up in the brainstorming, but to me, this ride is basically a pavilion-sized recreation of something like that.
It definitely was an inspiration. I can't tell you everything that we talked about in our notes, but that definitely came up as inspiration for the pavilion and what was happening.
I admire that with that inspiration, though, that you didn't just put a clone of the ride here, because that would have been like so easy to do. And like when I saw the theme, that's what I was worried that you guys were gonna do. But then doing this whole new ride with the same kind of concept really turned out great.
Yeah, and he spent a lot of time on like doing. Those were screenshots of the ride through, but he spent a lot of time doing an actual ride through of the entire attraction, which is really cool. He did several iterations to perfect it, and ended up coming back with the snapshots to not to make you have to sit and watch the whole video, but yeah, I thought he and D. Henley did a ton of work on that pavilion, and really just really went all out.
What program did they use to design the roller coaster?
I believe he was on Planet Coaster.
Planet Coaster. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Oh boy, Planet Coaster is very elusive to me because I've never had a computer good enough to properly run it.
My computer runs Roller Coaster Tycoon 2. It's a bit sketchy with Tycoon 3.
Well, I can safely say my computer can run Tycoon 3, so I have you beat there. Oh, but man. Yeah, I don't know. Go ahead.
I was going to say, this definitely sells me on Planet Coaster, because just looking at everything it can do is incredible.
Planet Coaster is not an entry-level game by any means, though.
True.
Which honestly makes all this stuff all the more impressive to me. Because Planet Coaster is definitely one of those things where you have to design everything in the game by hand. Like, they don't hold your hand through any of it.
Yeah.
All right. So, Pi, yeah, not only do they not include a clone of Adventures Through Inner Space, but there's nothing related to Body Wars. There's not anything related to the Life Health Pavilion that was going to be involved in the world in Future World back in the day. It's all just completely original stuff with the base element of Adventure Through Inner Space. So that's definitely one thing I have to compliment it on.
Oh, yeah. I love how the originality, when there's so many things that could have been like easy way outs here, I love how you didn't take any of them.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we'll get to easy way outs because I have some self-criticisms about the easy way outs with my project.
That's okay. There's nothing necessarily wrong with easy ways out. It's just sometimes it can be better to stay away from those.
No, I don't know. I think I micromanage my team into a corner with my project, but I'll get to that. I have some criticisms about myself as a team manager, but it won't be as blatant as it was on the forum when I posted it. Okay, so Power of 10. This was another a really good attraction. I just like how you guys take this very basic scientific concept and just expand, like, let's find all the ideas to explore it with.
Yeah, and it was once we decided on this pavilion, because to be honest, trying to think back, we didn't spend a ton of time with this pavilion as far as deciding what we were going to do. We talked about computers briefly at one point, but really once microverse got settled fairly quickly, and just the ideas really just kind of flowed. And as I said, Voxel and D. Henley really had they took the lead on this one for the most part, and they just had so many great ideas.
I definitely know Voxel is a science nerd, so that's totally not surprising to me.
he was all over this, but
oh yeah,
but yeah, just there's so many ideas that got bounced around. And they obviously didn't want to copy; they wanted to still do it in the spirits, of the Wonders of Life, but obviously change it up.
Sure.
And as you said, obviously I'm biased, but I thought the level of detail, like especially in this Power of 10, just for the type of traction and just the scene work and everything was so detailed.
Right. By contrast, again, a little bit of self-criticism and reflection on my end. I had to do the film for the Depths Pavilion, so I couldn't even come up with an original concept for it. I just said, oh, it's the living seas. Honestly, that whole thing was kind of half-assed. And I can say that about my contributions to the project. Honestly, I think I was a pretty decent team leader, but my contributions were really lacking, I think. This just goes above and beyond.
Oh yeah, every part of it turned out great here.
Mm-hmm.
The coaster maybe felt a little bit more like modern Epcot than classic Epcot, but also not too far where it's a problem or anything like that. I think it still turned out really great.
And that's what I thought was so great about this challenge. We do these, we've done, as I think Spacey mentioned, you do countries and pavilions, but it's usually current day stuff. So going back, 22 years, or trying to do the math here, 30 years. It's a much different challenge when you think about going back that mindset. It made for a really interesting week.
Yeah. So much has changed, both with the park, with the tone of the park, theme park design in general, not to mention how much has changed in the world of science and global politics.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just going to get a little bit coaster nerdy here for a second, now that you bring up the timeline. And I don't mean this as a diss to your project by any means, because I love the attraction. But I actually kind of see your coaster as more of a late 90s coaster. And I know this is getting uber specific and nerdy, but to me, your coaster kind of has a little bit it's like a more high-end rock and roller coaster.
Right.
So I see it not as a predecessor to Rock and Roller Coaster, but it's something that they would have built in response to Rock and Roller Coaster, something that's a little bit more well-themed than Rock and Roller Coaster. Does that make sense? I'm not saying it's a bad attraction by any means. No. I'm just
No, I totally get what you're saying. And I can see that. I think even Space even said he loved the computer design. For the times, and that's one of those things. Trying to do a ride like that. I think obviously, that kind of technology was there, but would you still see that then? Obviously we don't know, but I totally get where you're coming from.
To tell you the truth, I don't think it's an issue of technology. It's an issue of Disney's market at the time.
Right.
But then again, that was still the Eisner era, and Eisner, we all know he was all about pumping out the hip, cool teen demographic, yo. So, okay, Disney Dad, can you speak to curries at all? Because I, as a dining enthusiast myself, I was pretty fascinated by this.
Yeah, the dining was kind of interesting. I didn't have as much input on this one, but they were really kind of looking, obviously, a little upscale, looking for something tied to some kind of scientists. I know different scientists' names got bounced around, but really just kind of doing some, which we did with the quick service as well, trying to do, play on words, kind of the fun Epcot, kitschy kind of things. But having Curie's be more of the upscale dining place, obviously science tied.
Yeah. Okay.
Obviously more of an upscale menu, those kinds of things. Very sleek, very cool kind of place.
Yeah, I like it. All right, and there we go. There you have it, folks. Any final thoughts on the microverse, Disney Dad?
No, I don't think so. Unless you guys have any other questions or feedback, or.
Well, Pi just wanted to point out, just so everyone knew, we love that you guys actually counted the number of urinals.
that was a detail that really. I mean, everything on this page, not just that, even like the number of water fountains, the number of payphones in the area, all the like little tiny details like that.
And there were still payphones then, so that would be a legit.
Yeah.
No, Pi. I mean, Disney Dad. I am old enough to remember payphones, so not that young. All right. Anyways, so let's move on to this. Might honestly be my favorite pavilion of the 6 that were created for this project. Turkey. I really love what you guys did here.
Cool. Yeah, that was I guess kind of a jump in the dark. We actually didn't have a ton of debate. We had a handful of countries we talked about. Turkey was actually one of the first that got thrown out, but we did, some of the standards. We talked about India briefly, and we decided on Turkey. We probably didn't decide on Turkey until 4 or 5 days in.
Oh wow!
We actually, spent a couple days just brainstorming, throwing out countries, trying to think back, politically 30 years ago. And for a couple days, I think we were almost going to do South Korea, actually.
Oh God!
And we were leaning that way, and we had some cool ideas for it, but then we just didn't think we could differentiate it enough from China and Japan to make it, new and unique to the World Showcase. So
sure.
That's when we ended up going with Turkey at that point. So.
Did I hear you say that your team almost went with India at one point, though?
We talked about it, not a ton. Turkey kind of was the front runner, actually, most of the discussions, but we talked about India briefly.
That's really funny to me because your team, India was one of the things that got brought up. India was probably the runner-up before we eventually decided on doing Greece for my team. And then Tiki, your team actually wound up doing India.
Yep.
Yeah, we had.
So it's kind of funny that.
Yeah. That is funny. Yeah, because we had those three. We had those three, and then I think we had. What else did we have? I think we had like a Caribbean country thrown in there. We didn't have a huge list of countries we went through. It was pretty much 4 or 5 that we kind of bantered around.
Yes.
So what I love about this pavilion specifically is I really like how you center it around one specific city in India. You center it around Istanbul. Am I pronouncing that right? Istanbul.
Istanbul.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and obviously some great D. Henley artwork there.
Oh yeah. I just think that's so authentic to what the World Showcase is that you're not like, for this specific country, I feel like the World Showcase pavilions, they're a great mix of trying to recreate a specific city within the country and also recreating what the actual flavor of the country overall has to offer. And I feel like by setting it in this specific city, you guys do that in spades, because this city just represents all of the country so well.
Oh yeah, there are so many, with the city. It's obviously huge, but there's so many good landmarks and pull-ins we could have for the pavilion. So it just made sense to make it, Istanbul based entirely. I mean, there's more things than we could cram as far as sites and that kind of stuff into one pavilion.
Uh-huh.
Because looking at all these pictures, like every single picture used just jumps out at me as like I could 100% see that being on the World Showcase. Like everything about this country just looks like it fits.
And I feel like it's a country like Morocco that it doesn't instantly spring out as like a landmark tourist destination or anything like that. You know what I mean? It's not like an Australia or a Switzerland where the idea of this of a pavilion has been kicked around forever. I feel like it's much more it's a much more low key kind of choice.
Yeah, because that's one thing. Like you hear the kind of the standard countries bounced around, but Turkey's one I don't think any of us had really ever heard. And obviously, its history is not the greatest. But it was one of the things. It was kind of a chance, but we felt at that point in time, because we researched 80s history, and we just kind of felt at that point it was one of those things that we could see it happening. Would it be likely? I don't know, but it just felt like there was an opportunity for. It's similar to Morocco in ways, but it wasn't. That way we weren't doing another European country. And at that point, probably not going to do it in any South American countries, and so just trying to do something a little bit different, but it's still kind of be unique in its own way.
Mm-hmm. So I honestly don't even know what it is about the balloon ride that appeals to me so much, but I got a real kick out of it.
Yep.
I don't know, maybe I just, I just have a feeling this would be super popular just because of the popularity of Peter Pan's Flight. People just go nuts for this type of ride system.
Right. And that was funny because we were debating on an attraction, and the balloon got thrown out. So we started doing some research on it, and then I think Voxel brought up the land balloon ride from Tony Baxter. Like, oh, that'll be a cool tie-in. Reason that since it didn't get this, I guess at that point it had been 6-7 years prior, his idea had not gotten used, and then we got a little scared at one point because I started researching balloons in Turkey and found out it just happened they had just launched their first hot air balloon. It's like, okay, this is cutting it kind of close, but we just kind of worked that into the story. And it happened to work out because like at that point, early 80s, their tourism was in the crapper. And it just so happened, and then looking today, it's like they have like the most hot air balloon rides in the world, oddly enough, in Turkey each year. So it just kind of helped work into the story with the attraction that it was all kind of getting started at the right time. Just it worked out for us timing wise with the actual history.
Nice.
This.
I like it.
I love that you work in a cave into this very scenic, like overview of the entire country. Like, and here's a cave too, and it fits.
Yeah, and that was I did the work on the balloon ride, and that was one thing I didn't want to just do all scenes.
Sure.
And so trying to work in some natural, and as the caves popped up, I was like, well, this would be kind of cool. Who'd think to do a balloon ride inside of a cave? So.
Uh-huh. Okay, getting towards the end here. All right. Any other things you want to go over with Turkey?
No, I don't think so. So we were pretty happy, I think, with the way the two of them turned out. So don't think any additional
things
I need to add. So.
And I think once again, Team Brava definitely came out ahead in the first two projects because you guys were sort of like the Goldilocks, just right team in terms of cohesion, in terms of visuals. I mean, this project is it's very visually appealing. It's very much like, you get the professionalism of it. And I also think it's like, much in that same sort of like just right kind of way. It's got the perfect length to it. It's not too descriptive. It's not too short. You really get all you need to know.
Yeah, and we've been lucky. Our team, we all kind of clicked from day one. A lot of chatter, joking and back and forth, and people engaged. And we've seemed to have complemented each other really well as far as different things we can all do. So it's worked out pretty well. Obviously, with the first 2 weeks for us. So hope to keep it that way going forward.
Yeah.
At your expense.
All right, Pi, should we do yours next or mine next?
Why don't we do mine next and then we can end on yours?
Okay, sounds good. So let's get to, oh boy, okay, the Pavilion Symphony, the World Above, and then also Greece. Now, Pi, infamously, your guys' first project was probably the second most infamously long Google Doc on the internet currently.
Yeah, it was maybe a bit bigger than it needed to be.
That will be talked about for years in the forum, by the way.
Oh, I'm sure. It's gonna be like 3 seasons from now. Someone will be like, "So, what were some other notable projects?" Well, there was one that was like 100 pages long.
Well, and I know that was last week, but just to say, I mean, I know that it was kind of a joke, but I mean, for you guys to have 84 pages of content is really ridiculous. I mean, just not like ridiculous, but it's amazing.
I know what you mean.
So, kudos to you guys.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about the first round since we're on the second round, but personally, at least, I think a lot of people on the team were all really happy with how pretty much everything turned out in that. I mean, there's a few things that probably, given more time, could have turned out better. It's just looking back, it's like, oh, we could have cut like half of that and still had more than we needed.
All right, so let's just start with kind of the genesis of your ideas, Pi. Where did everything spring from?
Well, actually, with the world above, which I might sometimes slip up and just call it the Sky Pavilion, because that's what we were until like later on in the project calling it. But this kind of came from a compromise because we had a lot of different ideas going on, like everything from computers to doing a space pavilion to doing a weather pavilion to I can't remember all the ideas now, but there was like 5 or 6 ideas that kept getting bounced around, and space pavilion and weather pavilion were the 2 that kept coming up the most. And then, I kid you not, I don't remember making this post or sending it out into the messages, but I apparently woke up in the middle of the night and sent out a message. What if we combined the space and weather pavilion and make one big sky pavilion? And then fell right back asleep. And I woke up the next day, I remember like, "Ooh, I like that idea." So that's how we kind of wound up settling on this idea. Okay. And then it was just a matter. What was that?
So you imagine you're in your sleep too, then?
Apparently. I mean, a dream is a wish your heart makes and all that, I guess. But yeah, so that's how we kind of wound up settling on doing the Sky Pavilion, the world above, and all that. And then it was just a matter of trying to figure out what we wanted to do with it. One of the things we decided early on, and that we wanted to keep ourselves from doing, is as much as we all initially had ideas for like big dark rides and things like that, we counted it up, and of the about like 10 attractions that Epcot had at the time, 8 of them was in some form a dark ride. So we made ourselves kind of like an unofficial rule. Nothing we do in this project is going to be a dark ride.
Nice.
We wound up in the roller coaster having more dark-eyed elements than we originally meant to, but I think it still turned out pretty good and still more focused on the thrill element.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I would say by far probably the best element of this project is the original characters.
That was really very much a collaborative effort from a couple different people. I did the drawing, and it was Mickey Fan and Disney Fan were the two that did most of the work on the characters themselves.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, it fits so well into classic Epcot. It's just like you can see these characters and Figment just getting along swimmingly.
There was an idea at one point, I think it was MA Streaming, who suggested that we wound up not having time to do, of trying to make a fake guide map cover with Celsia and Nimbus and Figment and Dreamfinder together.
Nice. Okay, so yeah, Storm Chasers. Pi, I will admit, this is a good attraction. I'm not the biggest fan of it just because, frankly, I think you hit the nail right on the head that I feel like it's a little bit too much of a dark ride. Whereas I feel like Team Brava really went out of their way to make it a coaster first and foremost, but still had the theme of the shrinking and everything.
Yeah. This is
two of them. I definitely have to give the edge to Brava. This definitely isn't bad, though.
Oh yeah, I think it still turned out great. This is one that changed a lot right near the end because, well, we were trying to do some different things with the format of how we were like developing these ideas. MA Streaming was our project manager, and he had the idea that on a different week when there was more people who had more time, I think would work really well. But when it wound up, a lot of people, in even MA himself, wound up having a lot of things come up where they couldn't be on a lot. It didn't work out fully. But each day we picked something new and just kind of group brainstormed and worked through it together. So nearly everything you see here was a group effort of like 3-4 people that eventually just one person wrote up together. But the problem is, I know it was cool, and you can see that and how it worked out a lot in the Greece Pavilion. But the problem is, with schedules getting busy with the world above, we wound up just kind of like a day or two before the project was due, starting just dividing up those tasks because we just kind of ran out of time. And Storm Chasers, which I think was originally called Windbreakers, and somewhere in the project it can be referred to as that, I think. But this was like the last thing to get divvied up and was like one of the last things written and figured out.
And I kind of get the sense of that reading it. I mean, no disrespect to it, but it's definitely not as polished as some of the other stuff here.
It's the type of thing that has some great concepts, but could have used more time working on it.
Sure. Okay, Wonders of Beyond. This actually kind of rings a little bit truer to me of what Epcot really is.
I was really happy with how, I think Disney Fan was the one who did this, I believe. I was really happy with how it turned out. He did a great job with it.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
I like this too. One is a small thing, but I love too how you guys did like the little, the Disney theme park blurb with the height requirements and the age and all that. It's just little detail, but I thought that was a cool little extra thing to.
That's another thing that I believe was Disney Fans doing. He got started doing those. I think I helped him finish a couple of them, but that was his idea. It wound up being that me and Disney Fan and Mickey Fan had the most time during the week. And then K&B kind of worked independently on a couple things. And then like in the last few days, everyone came together and finished it up.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of things because of that, either at the early days was like the whole team working together, and then a lot of things that worked on like the middle block of time was going to be like, oh, Disney Fan did that. Mickey Fan. Oh, I did that. Just because of the nature of time.
Projects are the projects where it's hard to even distinguish who did what because it's such a collaborative effort.
Oh yeah, and you'll see that especially when we get to the Greek Pavilion.
Sure. Okay, let's see. The Sky Frontier Expo. This is, of course, the exhibits and everything like that.
All very cool. All very cool.
Right.
That
Chef
one was.
Nimbus.
I believe the Sky Frontier Expo, Chef Nimbus, and then the two shops were all KMB.
Nice.
But yeah, I love the name Chef Nimbuses.
Whenever I hear Nimbus, I just think of Dragon Ball.
Understandable.
OG Dragon Ball, not that Dragon Ball Z crap. Just kidding. Anyways. Oh, yeah, that's totally not Jock Lindsay's hangar bar at all.
That's something that I did that kind of worked against us, as I just was looking up a reference photo that I could slap in there when I was helping make this.
It's just that I just recently went to Jock Lindsay's hangar bar, so it sticks out for me.
It's a good
like
place.
The inclusion of that little pilot Mickey, though.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get to the main meat of this. Not to not to say that Wonders of Beyond is, you know what I'm saying. I think Greece was, as you said, I get the feeling that this definitely was a big collaborative effort.
Yeah, not that the world above didn't turn out great, and there's a lot of great things in it, like the characters. I'm happy with how the song and all turned out, and the Wonders of Beyond, but the Greece is where we all came together the most. And I think it turned out really fantastic.
Oh yeah.
Definitely.
The Labyrinth is just super interesting. It kind of reminds me of if they extended Injun Joe's cave on Tom Sawyer's Island to a full attraction.
That was what I was going for, actually.
Really nice.
I can't remember who came up with the idea, but I was the one who actually wrote this one up. And that was why I was trying to keep my explanations rather simple, and I'm trying to break the habit of just referencing other attractions in my descriptions of attractions, because I do that a lot. But
I feel you, man. I feel you on that.
But yeah, that was definitely how I wanted this kind of to look.
Nice. I remember back in middle school, I had to do a report on Daedalus, and that kind of got me interested in like old school, like, Greek mythological mazes and labyrinths and stuff like that.
For me, it was the Percy Jackson books, but either way, the story of Daedalus and the labyrinth is always really interesting.
Yeah. And Daedalus isn't like a marquee Greek god or a marquee Greek myth or anything like that. He's a little bit more obscure, which I like.
Yeah.
All right. Legends of Olympus, of course. This... I laugh because I remember seeing the glorious show that was Golden Dreams at California Adventure with the infamous talking Whoopi Goldberg statue animatronic. And this is essentially a much classier version of that, but with Greek gods.
I remember when I was really little, I've only been to California Adventure like once. Me and my family were walking by Golden Dreams, and we were like, what is that? And we looked up the description of it, and we were like, let's just go spend more time in Bugs Land.
I mean, pretty much, right? Like, with Golden Dreams, it's kind of like, let's do literally anything but that. I only did it the one time just because I knew it was closing and I wanted to get the quote-unquote credit, to quote the cool coaster fans out there. But honestly, I don't think it's a bad show at all. I think it's actually a pretty entertaining show. Like, it's a well done 20-minute chunk of history. It's kind of reminds me of like one of those like educational shorts they'd show you in school or something.
Right.
it's like how the Circle of Life show in the Land Pavilion isn't bad or anything like that. It's just kind of like something no one's gonna want to spend time in their vacation to do.
Yes, but to be fair, I think Golden Dreams was probably handled a lot better than Circle of Life was because it actually had a little bit of production value with the Whoopi Goldberg animatronic.
Yeah, I will give you it does have an animatronic over there.
All right. Yeah, I don't really have too much else to say about your project. But as you say, I definitely get the sense that everyone was kind of collaborating on this.
Yeah. I will say one last fun fact about the Legends of Olympus. This actually started as an idea in the India Pavilion because we wanted to do a big stage show. And then when we switched to the Greece Pavilion, we had the idea, well, we still want to do a big stage show. So we'll do the big stage show with the labyrinth underneath it and kind of do that. And then that stage show transformed into being the animatronic show that we have here. So this dates back to India.
That's interesting.
Also, I forgot to mention this when we went over it, but I love the where is it? The alternate timeline that you give.
Oh, that's at the end.
Bottom.
Oh, it's at the end. Okay. Where you know, stuff like the characters being replaced in a very adventure, you know, a journey into your imagination style way.
Yeah.
And as funny as that was, though, you could see all that happening. Like, knowing what we know about the last 30 years, like, it made total sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we had, like, more ideals for the alternate timelines, too. Like, we could have made this section twice as long with, like, twice as many replacements, but we decided to, like, limit ourselves here. It's a new concept for Team Castle, I know, deciding to limit ourselves.
All right. Okay, let's move on to Team Verde, which is the team that I headed up. And I got to admit, when I got the notification that I was team leader, I was a bit nervous because, you know, my personal schedule's been a bit hectic, but hey, it was classic Epcot. I just got back from a Disney World trip, my first trip to Epcot. I loved it, so I was up for the challenge. And I gotta say, probably the main flaw with my leadership is that we decided on stuff too early. Like, for me, this was a very by committee way to do a project, and I don't necessarily think that was the best way to do things. Because I don't think we were 100% satisfied with either of the concepts we came up with. The thing was, it was just kind of the, you know, the group consensus. So I don't know. Like, I'm sorry. It's the fact that I'm team leader on this that you know, it's kind of like a personal thing for me. Like, I really think I could have done better with the brainstorming side. Especially with India, because India was something that I was pushing a lot just because it was a World Showcase Pavilion that we haven't heard a lot in terms of you know, it wasn't like a Switzerland or you know, it wasn't like a Switzerland or in Africa where there's already a ton of stuff available for, you know, what was going to be happening with those pavilions. It wasn't like in Australia where everyone wants to do Australia. But at the same time, India is an iconic country. It's definitely got the, you know, a lot of rich history, rich culture to it. So for some reason, I was just really sold on doing India. Now, the other big concept that was going to be in play for World Showcase was United Nations. And I've got to admit, this was a concept that I wasn't thrilled about when we were going over it. But the more I think about it, the more I think we probably should have went that way. Now, the reason why I didn't want to go the United Nations route was mostly because of the fact that I felt like the idea was kind of taking the core concept of the World Showcase and sort of being like, and it's everything, you know, and I felt that was kind of taking a shortcut with it, but I feel like we could have developed it a little bit more. One idea we had was to do a kind of a spiritual successor to Small World, and have the whole pavilion be in a Mary Blair style, where it would be like all laid out with her tile murals and stuff like that, you know, and the color palettes of Mary Blair. And it would be kind of like in the center of Epcot, or in the center of the World Showcase, I should say. In a way, it would kind of almost replace the American Adventure as being in the center of it, you know, as kind of like this hub of different cultures. And I think that would have been a lot better than what we came up with. I guess I'm kind of going backwards here, but I'll kind of start with India, and then we'll work backwards up to the depths, because I think the depths is probably the better of the two things. Let me go to India.
I'll say this about the United Nations concept. It's the type of thing that if you can make it work great, the United Nations concept is like a Sonic the Hedgehog game. If you can find a way to make it work properly, it will turn out great. But I could have easily seen that going wrong, like most Sonic the Hedgehog's game do.
Yeah, I've been trying to rack my brain when I saw Space mention that. I was like, well, how would they have done that? I mean, that would have been a huge gamble, a very interesting gamble. But like Pi said, that'd be one of those things, like it could be amazing, or it could just be, you know, what is this?
As I said, we definitely wanted to take a Mary Blair Small World approach to it.
Yeah.
That's how we were going to approach it. And Disney Dad, yeah, you make a good point. It was going to be a risk, and I feel like that's why I got cold feet about it. I feel like as a team leader, I should have been more inspired to take a risk. I should have leaped into it a little bit more. Instead, what we went with was a country that we could all kind of unanimously agree on, but it wasn't a country that any of us were really particularly passionate about. And honestly, I feel like I don't know about like with Magic Feather, I think she did her job better than I did my job. But I think with the Folktale project, you can kind of tell that it wasn't my A game material.
I mean, I think it turned out pretty good and all that. The World Showcase pavilions are tough because not many of us have strong connections to any specific country.
Right.
Many of us are just kind of trying to figure out, okay, well, what country will we have to do the least amount of intensive research to get to be something good?
I did do some digging for this because I had to dig through the Wikipedia of, you know, India folklore, and then I went to another Wikipedia page to dig up the animal folklore. So I went to 2 Wikipedia pages, not just one. See, I'm a big boy.
You're a big boy.
In all seriousness, though, I do think this came together quite well in terms of, like, this is based on like a whole collection of short stories and fables that tie together into the different themes, into how to gain a friend, how to lose a friend, and then war and peace. And I feel like what I did was, without even reading any of them, honestly, so I have no idea. I haven't the faintest damn clue if, and this is maybe why my kind of disconnect with this project came into it. I just literally read the titles of these books, and each book has like 12 installments, and I picked 2 from each.
Some of them are very interesting. When I did my India project, first I wanted to be Imagineer, like I did something along, like not quite the same, but like I read a few of their stories. There's some interesting stories they have.
Right. So my point is, I'm just like, I didn't even go that far though. I didn't even read the stories. I just literally picked them out based on what pairings of animals I could envision scenes around. You know, so literally there's not a whole lot of culture to this. I just kind of went with the generic themes of what the stories are and pick stuff that I could do kind of scenic stuff around. So there's really not a ton of accuracy to what the actual folktales represent. I'm sorry to be so self-critical here. I just, you know, I really think compared to, I was very proud of the Hunchback project I did in particular last round. So I think compared to that, this is just it's kind of a bogey. I mean, it's not terrible, but like I said, it's far from my best work. However, Festival of Wonder is definitely something that Magic Feather spent a lot of time with, and she, you can tell she really put some thought into the theater system, into how much capacity this thing was going to have. I really like the fact that it's not just another Circle Vision show. I think that's what we all did really well, is coming up with like alternatives to Circle Vision stuff. Because I got to admit, I was kind of lazy, and I was just like, yeah, plop down a Circle Vision. No one will know. You know, it's kind of like sweeping the dirt under the rug a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we got to have something. Do a Circle Vision. So I'm glad that
I mean, I can understand
in. What?
I was saying, I mean, I can understand that because while it might seem like the obvious choice, is almost a tradition for a format for World Showcase things. It's the same thing like how, yes, in some ways you could knock someone doing a boat ride in the World Showcase because there's been a lot, but at the same time, it's kind of a tradition for the World Showcase, so I have a tough time ever saying that as a negative.
Sure.
Okay. But I do like how this turned out. I like the mix of like the live performers, but without it being like too over the top where it feels unbelievable.
Yeah, definitely.
Almost feels like Streetmosphere mixed in with a mini Circle Vision type show.
All right, so let's transition into the depths. This was the one that we had a hard time kind of nailing down. Nailing down the overall concept. There were a lot of different ideas floating around. One of them was, ironically enough, the Air Pavilion.
There we go. That could have been close.
It could have been.
We were this close to both having a Sky Pavilion and a India Pavilion.
It could have been a really boring round of the season.
Yeah. We were also toying around with the idea of doing a seas pavilion, but what we ended up doing was kind of like a compromise between a land and the sea with the depths. And it was our Michael, this was all him in terms of the concept of doing something that explores the subterranean underworld of the Earth's core. And I really love that as a concept. Of course, the big thing that we had to avoid was there's a whole realm of like mining and like Journey to the Earth's core type of rides. There's, of course, Journey to the Center of the Earth. There's the Knott's Berry Farm Calico Mine ride, even more e-ticket affair like the Escape from Gringotts and stuff like that. Big Thunder Mountain even all uses the mining and the the stalactites and everything. They all uses that kind of set piece. So we really wanted to distinguish ourselves from that. But the idea was to kind of combine the two, to kind of be like, okay, the ocean is Earth's big unexplored frontier, but so is the under the surface, and that all kind of comes together. Like the whole idea is there's a lot of our planet that's just unexplored and vast and that we just don't have access to it. We really want to chart that. Big props to Skipper 2, who once again provided excellent concept art. He didn't do any of the write-ups, but he was very active in the brainstorming, as well as, of course, like I said, the concept art just being a big highlight for him. Our Michael, of course, did the main ride, and I think he did a fantastic job on it. I think he did a great job of making it feel very scientific, but at the same time having something that I feel would appeal to the whole family.
Yeah, there was some really good description with the ride. I liked obviously the art. The art showed it off, but a lot of good ride description and scene breakdowns, and very descriptive and easy to understand what was happening. So that was very cool.
Yeah. The Great Seas was ID Institute. I feel like this was another really good, kind of classic Epcot theater thing. Of course, ironically enough, we get Judi Dench before Judi Dench in Epcot, kind of like a weird alternate history thing.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I never did experience the Jeremy Irons Spaceship Earth, so Judi Dench will always be my Spaceship Earth. Anyways.
I liked Jeremy Irons better, but I think it helps that he also had the better end sequence. It wasn't the choose your own adventure.
Oh, I will admit, as much as I love Spaceship Earth, that end sequence is garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fun if you're with people who aren't into the ride and will get into that, but it's not good.
Yeah. Like my kid loves that, but I'm just like, really?
Yeah.
And he's just hitting buttons. He didn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
Honestly, the coolest thing about the final scene in Spaceship Earth is just how steep the incline is.
Oh yeah, how steep it is, looking up at all those lights that mimic like the stars or whatever.
Well, no, I'm not talking about that. I wish the whole attraction, I wish the whole decline was like that.
Yeah.
I'm just talking just in general, the sensation of being so steep on the Omnimovers is kind of novel.
That is pretty cool.
All right, and of course, I already kind of addressed my main gripes on the Living Seas theater experience. Was just it's really short. I mean, I really could have put a lot more time into this compared to a lot of the other theater experiences you guys did throughout the project. I don't think it's bad by any means. I like Space pointed out. I like the kind of the predecessor to the Voyage of the Little Mermaid dry wet stuff, but I don't know. I just think it's lacking in the passion.
I don't know if I would say it's lacking in the passion or the detail that much. I think it turned out pretty good. It feels shorter of the description, but being like the third ride for the Pavilion, I don't think that's a problem.
Right.
And finally, I honestly think the Crystal Gardens, ironically, might be my it's very short, but I just love the idea of just this hubway into the pavilion that's connected to the restaurant. It kind of reminds me of the lobby of the Disney animation attraction with all the giant screens. It's just kind of this nice, relaxing lounge area.
Yeah, it sounds nice.
Mm-hmm. All right, and that's really about it. Like I said, my main problem with leadership this round, I think, is that I didn't give my team enough breathing room with the creativity and with the brainstorming. I was just kind of like, okay, we have to decide everything by this date and this date. And Space was absolutely right in that there was not a lot of time. There were just days where we would just sit on the brainstorming where we would just have nothing because everyone was assigned to their individual roles, and I was doing my research on Tall Tales that didn't really amount to much. And I could have done better. I really could have done better. I'm kind of just reflecting on this. I'm glad that our team didn't technically lose, because I'm glad that Team Verde didn't come in last technically 2 times in a row. That's one thing I can kind of hold proudly. But, it's still one of those things where it's like, when you're in charge of something, it kind of becomes your baby. And I feel like, especially for the source material, this could have been a lot. I don't know. I feel like in terms of presentation, this was a better presented project than our last one. I just think the Magic Kingdom project, there was a lot more passion behind it on all ends. I feel like this one was a bit more kind of like doing something by committee, like doing something like, okay, you got this assignment. You don't really feel that strongly about it, but hey, we have to crack it out. So let's go, team. That's kind of what it felt like. And that's not to say it was an unenjoyable experience. Like I said, I think I just kind of worked myself up a little too much being the project leader. So
I think you did. I mean, it's one of those things like with a team competition, you just don't know week to week how it's going to work. And I mean, I would never tell anybody they did a crappy job. I mean, we're just doing this for fun. And there's a lot of good about this project. So I wouldn't say you just were god awful.
Oh no, I'm not saying I'm god awful. I'm just.
But I mean, and it's just one of those things. Like every week's going to be different, no matter who's. I mean, if you'd had a different assignment, it might have gone differently. You don't know. I mean, it's a learning experience. Maybe there are things you could have done differently, but I don't think anybody's ready to run you over with a car or anything.
Sure. All right. Like I said, I'm just kind of like, this is like self-there. It's like, when I'm in charge of something, I take it more seriously than I probably should. So, and it's not that I think it's a bad project. I just think I had a lot more fun designing the Magic Kingdom stuff. But hey, I guess that kind of speaks to what Epcot represents versus what Magic Kingdom represents, right? Like Magic Kingdom's kind of the dessert and Epcot's the vegetables. Like Epcot is like very well seasoned, like like really high end vegetables, but it's still vegetables at the end of the day. It's still doing something that has to appeal to education and culture more than fun.
Yeah. Let's face it, as much as me personally and a lot of Disney fans have such an appreciation and love classic Epcot, is a reason from the general public's point of view that most of it isn't the same anymore. A lot of people aren't having as much fun with Epcot as they were at the Magic Kingdom.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Okay, guys. Well, I think that concludes things. Do you want to give any cryptic teasers about what we might be working on for Stanza 3?
It involves the Disney Vacation Club.
You're doing that too?
Oh, man. This is like that time I wore the same dress as someone else to a party. Oh,
crap.
All right. And I think on that note, folks, we will go ahead and sign off. Have a good night.